Sometimes watching old movies triggers some ideas about predictive programming. And as I said in the last hour, I was texting Ryan Gable about how bad the news is getting and how I'm watching the Game Show Network because it doesn't upset me. Watching Family Feud and Cash Cab is not something that weighs heavy on my heart. I kind of like it. Until your stepson comes downstairs and tells you, you know what? This is what old people do. They watch the Game Show Network. And Wes is nodding. Well, it doesn't upset me. Watching CNN and Fox just upsets me. I just don't know. So I'm talking to Gable, and you know, I'm texting him. We're talking about, well, what do you do to not be upset? He says, well, I watch old movies. And so he wanted to watch some science fiction movies. I said, hey, I'll watch, and I went through I'll watch The Purge. I kind of said, you know, offhandedly. And there it was, The Purge. I'm like going, I don't know, I want to watch this movie. Yeah, so I watched the movie. And I just want to stand corrected, just to make sure there's no confusion here. I said earlier that The Purge was set in the year 2017. That's not exactly true. The Purge movie, the first Purge movie, was set in the year 2022. Just like Soylent Green. 2022, but it was in 2017 that they first proposed The Purge. So we're seeing The Purge 5 years later in the year 2022 when it's at its worst. And, of course, the final Purge happens in the year 2048, but this is 2022 where this happens. So the National Purge occurs, the one that is, you know, well underway, March 21st, 22nd, 2022 is when it actually is accepted as a way to equalize crime. Now, for those of you that don't know, this movie talks about the new founding fathers of America. And they assumed power in the wake of a financial crisis that happened between the years of 2007 and 2008. And what they did is they launched a social experiment as an attempt to get America's societal obsession with violence under control. So for 12 hours a year, one day set aside out of the year, all crime is legal. Let it all out. Do what you want to do. Kill, rape, do whatever you do, just so the lowest rungs of society can destroy themselves. That's what they were thinking. They thought that, well, it was a plot to kill off the homeless populations and the poor populations and the crazy populations. The ones that are the dregs of society, the dregs of humanity. They wanted to have them just destroy themselves. And I got to thinking as I was watching this that, you know, this is pretty damn close to what I've been talking about when I talked about decapitation exercises and how they're now increasing security for congressmen and congresswomen. They're increasing security. They're saying they're not doing enough. There have been attempts on the lives of certain people in Congress, and now we're hearing about Nancy Pelosi that wants to fly into Taiwan, and the Chinese say, you do that, we'll blow you out of the sky. This is something that we talked about, the idea of a decapitation exercise where leaders end up dying or major leaders end up dying due to violence, an attack, things of that nature. But the worst thing that can happen is that we get to have this government purge, or there's a required purge, or there's a purge that happens within our government, within our own neighborhoods. And the powers that be have to call in the military. Eventually, they divide people up, throw them in camps. Civil police forces are made. We wiretap most homes. We have homegrown terrorism laws. We have more gun control laws. I mean, you just name it. And then eventually becomes necessary for governments to point out who terrorists are. They give the go-ahead to torture neighbors that you think are enemies of the state. So it's violence, it's torture, it's beheadings, it's cannibalism, just like what you see in the movie The Purge. And these memes now have been part of our nightly routine as the New York Times talks about cannibalism and as, you know, as I was talking about the movies that are talking about this type of stuff, whether it be Batman or some other film. But the idea is that everyone is a ticking time bomb, and the solution is just to coerce the public into disarming itself so that they can be subjected to other violent behaviors being brought on by the encroaching police state. Now, this could very well wake you up to the idea that eventually we're not going to be safe. If the mob were in the cities committing acts of murder, just like in the movie The Purge, we would see turf wars, we would see psyops, we would see real guns firing, we'd see people dying in the streets, and there would be an insurgency. Not only would we see the people declare war on the police, but we may even see the military declare war on the police. That's how a true civil war is. A purge would equalize everything, and all the government incentivizing for a military police force would pay off. But what I was bringing up before we had to go to break was that on January 1st, 2023, a version of the scenario depicted in the actual film of The Purge could become a full-time reality in Illinois if legislation passed after the summer of George Floyd is not repealed. On January 13th, 2021, during the post-election lame duck legislative session, a 764-page opus known as Illinois House Bill 3653, it was basically called the SAFE-T Act, Safety, Accountability, and Fairness Equity Today Act, was rushed through by Democrats at the state capitol. There was no mandate from the electorate. It barely had enough votes to pass, even in the extremely lopsided Democrat majority Springfield legislature. So what it did is it passed in the wee hours of the morning under the radar. According to State Republican Representative Tony McCombie, quote, the Democrats cut off debate. They didn't appear to have the votes as it took several minutes to browbeat their members to their switches and voting buttons to call the final vote. But it passed in both houses and was signed into law with great fanfare by Democrat Governor J.B. Pritzker. So the legislation is a veritable wish list for progressives opposed to the very idea of incarceration or even effective policing. To start, criminal suspects arrested on charges ranging from petty theft to murder will no longer have to post bail because cash bail will go away entirely. So will judges be able to keep obviously dangerous defendants in jail? That's the big question. If the defendant poses a real or present threat to specific identifiable persons or high likelihood of flight, judges may keep them in jail. But if not, you can kill your wife, you can kill friends, you can kill whomever, and stay out of jail if they don't repeal this bill, if they don't repeal this law.